Welcome to Next Level Play Therapy, a weekly podcast dedicated to supporting the next generation of child and adolescent therapists to provide exceptional play therapy services. We'll explore all things play therapy to elevate your work with children and adolescents using the therapeutic powers of play. I'll discuss practical tips and ideas so you can provide a transformative experience for your young clients and make a real difference in their lives. So get ready to take your play therapy skills to the next level and make a lasting impact in the lives of children, adolescents, and families. Hey there, welcome to this week's episode of Next Level Play Therapy. Today, we're going to talk about engaging parents, especially engaging challenging parents in the play therapy process. So if you're a play therapist, or maybe you're a child and adolescent therapist and you are kind of working with kids and and adolescents, and you've probably experienced some challenges, maybe figuring out how to engage parents. Maybe you've had them in sessions and it hasn't gone very well. That's what I want to talk about today, is giving you some tips and strategies that I've used and learned over the last 30 plus years through trial and error to really gain the trust of parents, even challenging parents, and know how to engage them more effectively. The byproduct of this is that you get rid of your imposter syndrome. It's been my experience that play therapists probably their imposter syndrome probably comes out more when working with parents. And it makes sense when you think about it, because most of the training that you get is based on working with kids, and you can get kids in the playroom and play with them, and and it's magic. Then you build your rapport. I mean, every once in a while we get some challenging, and there are some challenging children with really complex issues that we work with. Typically what comes up, though, a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times when I am talking to people, because I do a lot of consultation, I have my Play Therapy Academy program, which is my online consultation program. A lot of what comes out of the discussions is challenges figuring out how to work with parents. And when I say parents, I'm going to use that in a generic way. Anybody, any adult, any grown-up kind of functioning in that parenting role for the child, because sometimes we work with kids who aren't living with their parents. Maybe they're living with another family member, or they're only living with one parent, and they may or may not have contact with the other parent, or maybe they're living with grandparents. So when I say parents, it's more of a generic, any of the grown-ups functioning in that parenting role. And it can be challenging knowing how to engage parents in the change process in play therapy. And so we also know that it's important, if you're working with children and adolescents, then children don't exist in a vacuum. They exist and are dependent upon and daily interact with their family members, so parents, siblings. And we know from neuroscience and attachment, and especially all of the work that we're learning about interpersonal neurobiology and some of the work of other early researchers like Alan Shore and Peter Fonagy and his colleagues, learning about the role of those early experiences on the formulation of emotion regulation capacity, also our identity. So who we are, my beliefs about myself, others, and relationships, all come from these really important family relationships. And we also know when parents are doing better, children do better. I really kind of believe that a lot of the challenges that children are facing right now is because there's so much anxiety and distress and just some challenges with everything going on in the world, maybe in your community. I know here in the US, families are really struggling. And when we're able to create that strong environment where children can thrive within their home, we know they do better. That's how they develop resiliency. And so to me, as a play therapist, I think we really can do a better job of integrating parents. And also, I'm a big fan of using a family systems lens with attachment and neuroscience to engage and look at relationship patterns going on within the family system. I think we don't think a lot about sibling relationships and the role that they have to create a safe place, to create strong support relationships, all of those, that environment that children live in. I think we can do a better job of finding ways to support children by supporting their parents and supporting their family systems. So that, and we also know that can be challenging. We know that can be hard. So that's what I want to talk about today, is giving you some tips and strategies how to engage parents more effectively, more confidently in the change process. And I am also going to talk about my attachment-focused family play therapy model that I developed several years ago. Actually, it's been longer than several years ago, because I needed a way that had enough flexibility, but was also rooted and grounded in theory and family systems and attachment and neuroscience, that had enough flexibility to work with parents or just work with siblings or get the whole family in there or parts of the family and facilitate the change that I'm about to talk about today. So if you're interested to learn more about that, I do have a live webinar coming up, or a recorded version if you're not able to attend the live webinar. So you'll want to hang on to the end. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it. I'll also talk about my book, which I based the webinar on, Attachment-Focused Family Play Therapy. So let's get started for today. So if you're watching, I would love to see who's here. Post your name in the comments, where you're from, what population you're working with, what are your challenges. Feel free to ask questions. The only thing that I ask is that you don't bring up like specific client issues, because it is a public format. So we want to keep it more private and maintain that privacy. And feel free to join this discussion if you're watching live. I would love to hear from you. If you're watching on the replay, I would also like to know your thoughts, where you're from, what population you work with. And for those of you who are listening on the podcast, feel free to join the conversation. And for those of you listening on the podcast, there is a recorded version of the training that I have coming up as well. And I'll talk more about that as we go along. So first things first, today's topic is really on how to engage challenging parents in the play therapy process. And to do that, you really need to think about what theoretical lens that you're kind of looking through. So what do I mean by that? Our theoretical model helps us understand and make sense of what's going on. So when we're seeing certain things happening, we conceptualize them from a specific theoretical model that's going to influence why we think the behavior is happening and what patterns in the client's life are supporting that. That's your case conceptualization, which will be based on your theoretical model. So when I'm working with children, especially when I'm thinking systemically and I'm looking at them within context of their family system, then I love using an attachment and neuroscience lens to conceptualize that with some family systems theory kind of thrown in there, because that's going to help you figure out what's the role. Once you figure out why the behavior is, or, get a good sense in the beginning. We're not always going to know everything right from day one. Some of that, I usually like to take like the first 90 days to get a really good sense of things. And I'm going to use that information to help me figure out what's going on. And my theoretical lens is going to help me figure out what's the role of parents. What is the role of parents in the treatment that you provide for children and adolescents? And in play therapy, there's kind of this traditional approach of you just focus on the individual client, which is the child. And that makes sense because it answers the question, who's the client? From a play therapy perspective, the child is the client. However, that doesn't mean that we don't look at the child in context. We look at the child in context of what's going on in their family and the role of parents and in the change process, helping their child through the change process. So when we see parents as a vital component of the change process, then we'll begin to formulate our expectations. You can't really clearly communicate expectations to parents about their role in the change process if you haven't first figured that out for yourself. A lot of mistakes that I see happen a lot are, as a play therapist or child and adolescent therapist, parents are important, so you want to involve them, or any number of reasons. Child won't go in the session alone, or you're noticing parents are anxious, or you start worrying about what's going to happen, what parents are thinking is going on in the playroom without being present. All of these things, all of these worries pop up in your head. And so then you just kind of plop parents in the session with no plan, no understanding of what their role is, no discussion with them about their role. And then what ends up happening is it feels awkward. You feel awkward. Your imposter syndrome starts going off the chain. And a lot of that is due to not really having a plan based on your expectations. And your expectations are going to be based on how you see parents' role in the change process. So that's why it's important really to have that theoretical model that you're looking at. I like using neuroscience and attachment because from the research, decades of research have shown us from a neurobiological standpoint and theoretical, we see the influence of these family and attachment relationships on the ability for children to regulate their emotions, for their beliefs about themselves, who they are, their capability, their self-esteem, their self-concepts. All of those are rooted in these really important relationships for children. The next thing is, once you have your case conceptualization, you have your theory lens, you're looking at this from a neuroscience and attachment lens. So you understand the role of parents, you understand how to communicate that to them based on these things. Underlying all of this is building trust. In order to really engage parents, you really have to build trust with them. And if you've listened to any of my previous live stream episodes or replays, then you know that building trust is a really important part of the process, because parents already feel, most of them, the vast majority of parents bringing their child already feel like failures. They're going to be convinced that you think they're a terrible parent, that you're judging their parenting. They've heard 97 million trillion things on the internet about what makes a good parent. They've seen other people showing up on Instagram and all of that, maybe TikTok, about their fabulous relationships with their children. We know that social media has an influence on creating anxiety and depression in people. So they're seeing all these things and being bombarded and hearing 97 million things about, well, you have to do this to be a good parent, or you have to do this to do a good parent, or if you do this, or if you show up imperfectly, you feel like you've just failed your child, right? So building relationship with parents means you're really knowing how to engage that therapeutic use of self. Your therapeutic use of self in a professional capacity means you show up authentically and congruently with empathy and unconditional positive regard with parents. Now, we have to hold some hard things sometimes, and that doesn't necessarily mean we don't have hard conversations. Sometimes we need to have hard conversations. If you have built that trust with them, if they believe that you are not judging them, if you believe that you are there to support them, if they believe you are there to support them, then you're going to build that trust. And when you build that trust, they're going to be more willing to make the hard changes that you're asking them to make. To do that, though, you have to have a consistent and dedicated time to meet with them. They are not, some parents, you can do the 5-minute check-ins at the end, or you can do the texting or emails, which I never recommend those, doing therapy via text or email. You really need to do it face-to-face, or Zoom. If you're doing them online, do them by Zoom. Then you need that time to build that trust, to be in the room with them so that they can experience you as supporting them in the service of helping their child. So that's what makes it different than that doing individual counseling with parents. You're meeting with them. The whole focus is what's going to help their child make the necessary changes and get the healing that they need. That's the focus. That's where you're still keeping child as the client. So you really need to build trust. And then so now you have your theory model, you understand the role of parents, you're using your neuroscience and attachment lens, you've built that trust. Part of knowing how to engage parents is really understanding their capacity. So what are their strengths? You want to focus on those. Also, where are areas that they can use more support? I mean, who of us doesn't need support? When my kids were little, it was nice getting support. Parenting is hard. I didn't always do it perfectly. Once you build that trust, then you also are helping them make the changes that they need to make. But you first have to know what they are. And in order to do that, you need to have them in the room. I think one of the best ways to do that, to get a sense of parenting strengths and where they may need support is to get them in the therapy room with you, with their child, to at least use the play therapy sessions with the child and their parent. And then also to get a better sense of how both, if they're with both parents are in the home, get both parents in there with the family, get them in there with the siblings. You'll get a sense of how they're managing the dynamics in the home. You'll see it in real time. You won't have to rely on self-report, because I don't know about you. How many times have you had this happen where you're meeting with your client, you're doing your individual counseling sessions, you're meeting with parents, and what parents are reporting doesn't seem to be lining up with what's going on. And that doesn't mean that they're not, that they're lying. I don't mean to suggest that at all, but they don't know. They're not trained like we're trained. They don't know. That's why they're coming to you. They need you to know. They're reporting to you what they know. They're reporting to you what is their perspective, how they're perceiving things. So unless you get them in there in the session, then you don't really have a chance to see using your clinical lens to understand what's going on. And so in my mind, really the best way to assess that parenting capacity, where their strengths are, because you really want to focus on those, and where they need extra support, is to get them in the play therapy room and to integrate them in the play therapy process. You'll have more, especially with the more challenging parents, you'll have more luck with that when you've built trust to get them in there. But the other thing is, you need to have a framework. You need to have a model in which helps you know what to do in the sessions. That's one of the reasons that I created my attachment-focused family play therapy model. I say my default. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker. And I got my master's degree back in the early 90s. And my whole focus since grad school, like when I learned about family systems theory in graduate school, like a million years ago, I was like a new convert to Jesus, man. I learned about this family therapy. I was like spreading the gospel of family therapy. I thought it was the best thing I had ever heard of. Now, mind you, this was really back in the early 90s. So back then it was kind of the new thing. And a lot of the graduate programs didn't even integrate. You didn't really even get family systems work like we do now. It's not nearly as integrated as it is now. And my whole program, my whole specialization or concentration clinical work was learning family systems theory. Well, then fast forward several years later and learning about attachment theory. Oh my goodness. Attachment theory, neuroscience, family systems. I was in heaven, clinical theoretical heaven. So to me, it makes so much sense to integrate parents in there. And so I'm a big proponent of that, getting them in there. But we need a framework. Like, we need a framework that helps us know what to do in sessions, how to pick the interventions. How do you know which stage of change they're in? How do you access those therapeutic powers of play? How do you deal with all of those different ages and developmental stages? Like, what if you have a 6-year-old and a 10-year-old and a 16-year-old in the session? How do you keep them all engaged? Well, your model is going to help you figure that out. And to me, that's the beauty of play therapy. Play therapy means you can use those therapeutic powers of play and get everybody engaged that way. And trust with parents will help them get engaged, because it's sometimes parents are a little uncomfortable doing something other than talking. They might be a little uncomfortable using the play process. But the best way to do that is get them all in there, and having a theory model to do that, understanding and assessing, helping you understand strengths and areas where they need more support is really important. And then the final thing that I wanted to share, I've kind of already started sharing that, which is using a family systems lens to family play therapy lens to facilitate that engagement and change. So I kind of already started talking about that a little bit. You have that framework that's going to guide you through the change process. It's going to help you understand and clearly communicate what the parent's role is and what they're going to be doing, what you're going to be doing. Having that family play therapy allows you to see in real time what is going on, and allows parents to be able to practice some of those attachment-focused parenting skills that you're going to teach them. They can use those in real time and get support with you. In my attachment-focused family play therapy model, there's also a whole structure of when you're meeting with just parents alone, how you're partnering with them through the change process, and building that rapport with them, in addition to what you're doing in those family play therapy sessions. And you get to see in real time what's going on in the family, all those family patterns, the relationship patterns, and you're creating and you're using and implementing the interventions, those play therapy activities, in real time with family members, helping them to make that shift to create that secure attachment environment that creates support and resiliency for clients. And why would you not want to promote healing within the whole family system? That's kind of how I look at it. You build a support network for your clients with their siblings and with their parents. So that is it for today. So let me do a quick recap. So really engaging parents in play therapy can be difficult, especially if you aren't clear yourself about how parents are going to be involved in the change process. And to me, using an attachment and neuroscience lens helps me to conceptualize how children can benefit by having their parents in the play therapy process. And because now you understand the role of parents, and you can communicate that to parents from the very beginning, rather than just kind of having them in session and winging it and not really knowing what to do. And then your imposter syndrome kicks in. Parents are kind of confused, and it just doesn't feel very good. I have been there, and I have found when I have a model to use, then I feel more confident and I have a better idea how to help my clients. So that always makes me feel better, right? Because we want to make a change. That's why we got into this profession. We want to make a difference, which means we need to really have that grounding in a theoretical model that's going to guide us through and help us understand who needs to be in the session and who maybe not be in the session. And the second thing is really the glue to making this all work is building rapport with parents. Building rapport with parents means that you need to build trust with them, that therapeutic use of self, where you're demonstrating unconditional positive regard and empathy. And again, that doesn't mean you don't have hard conversations, and it doesn't mean that you're not going to challenge, once you've established that trust, and once parents have experienced you as seeing them and actually hearing them and not judging them, then they will make those changes. Then you can have those hard conversations, but not before then. They have to trust you first, or it's not very likely they're going to make those changes you're asking them to make. And then once we have that theoretical model, we understand the role of parents, we have that understanding of how to identify and understand what the problem is and identifying those patterns that are sustaining it. We've built trust. And now we also want to assess parenting abilities, parenting strengths, and where they need additional support. And my belief is the best way to do that is to get them in the room with the child. Have a plan, have a framework that you're using that helps you understand, it's grounded in theory, and then helps you understand what you're supposed to be doing in those sessions. And how are you working with parents to really understand and assess strengths and areas of need. I think you really need to get them in the playroom with you, because then you're seeing for yourself. You're using your clinical expertise and training and understanding, and not relying on them and their perception, because they're not trained like you are. They're coming because they need you to figure it out. And then the final thing is that I believe using a family play therapy model will help to engage parents in a really deep way, to really help them engage in a meaningful way in the change process, where they feel supported as your partner in the change process. And you have a plan, you have a framework, you know what to do in each phase of the change process. You know how to help parents learn some attachment-based parenting skills. You have that relationship with them to help them use those skills and practice those skills and get feedback from you of what's going well, and working collaboratively. My mouth's not working. Working collaboratively with them in that healing process. So that is it for this week, and I will see you next week. Bye for now. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Next Level Play Therapy. I hope you found the discussion valuable and gained new insights and ideas to support your work helping children, adolescents, and families heal. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. Your feedback helps to improve and reach more people who can benefit from this information. Remember, play therapy is a powerful tool for healing and growth. Whether you're a new play therapist or experienced, I encourage you to continue your learning journey to unlock the potential of play in your own work and relationships. If you have any questions or topic suggestions for future episodes, I'd love to hear from you. Connect with me on social media and visit my website at Renewing Hearts Play Therapy Training to stay updated on upcoming episodes, trainings, and resources. Thank you once again for listening to Next Level Play Therapy. Until next time, keep playing, learning, and growing.